Our top story, that sinking loonie. For the first time in nearly 13 years, the Canadian dollar dipped below 70 cents US today. There are plenty of reasons to cheer the milestone. Just ask manufacturers and exporters who are getting more bang for their buck, or tourist operators who see visitors flocking to this country and Canadians opting for staycations. But in one vital part of our day-to-day lives, the low loonie is costing every single consumer more money and putting millions of Canadians at risk. 81% of the fruits and vegetables and nuts consumed in Canada are imported. That means the lower the loonie, the higher the cost of those items. One food economist did the math late last year. He said for every cent our dollar drops, foods that are imported increase by at least 1%. In 2015, fruits and veggies jumped in price by as much as 10%. The University of Guelph's Food Institute expects them to far outpace inflation again this year by as much as 4.5%. It estimates that the average Canadian household will spend $8,600 on food in 2016. That's $345 more than last year. According to the author of that report, Canada is the only industrialized country where you find the food inflation rate to be above 2.5%. That's significant. Right now, we're sitting at 4.1%. Now, that's daunting news to any Canadian, but particularly scary for those most vulnerable. An estimated 4 million Canadians experience some level of food insecurity, meaning 4 million Canadians aren't sure how they'll feed healthy meals to their families or themselves. That's especially the case in the North. Just look at some of those prices. Captured inside grocery store in Nunavut. A jug of Tropicana apple juice priced at $12.89. An applesauce pack for $14.49. A red bell pepper for $16.89. Diana Bronson is an executive director of Food Secure Canada. She joins us from Montreal. Diana, when everybody has a different reaction when we hear the dollar's plunging below 70 cents US. When you hear that, what goes through your mind?
Well, I am concerned about increased food costs because already 1 in 8 households in Canada is having trouble feeding their family, compromising the quality or the quantity of the food that they're able to put on their table, and a good number of those living in severe food insecurity. That's actually 1 in 6 children in Canada. So I'm very concerned about those households, those 4 million Canadians that are already having trouble making ends meet.
Exactly. If it's as bad as that now, 1 in 6 children, what happens when you see that, with every penny that shaves off the dollar and seemingly nothing out there that's aiming to stop it?
Well, you mentioned in your intro, Peter, that some of the food items that are going particularly high are fruits and vegetables, and that's exactly the kind of items that we need more of in our diet. In fact, we have a bizarre situation in Canada where the food that should be accessible and cheap, like fruits and vegetables, is actually very expensive. And junk food, your French fries, your hamburgers, your fast food, is what's cheap. So what we can anticipate for people living on a tight budget with regards to food, that they'll be eating less good food and more bad food. And that's bad news for everyone, because that's going to result in higher healthcare costs and in a number of other factors. It's going to promote more diabetes, more cardiovascular disease. The long-term health impacts are very, very serious.
So what do we do? I mean, the fact is this enormous percentage of what we consume is imported. There's not a lot we can do to change that. So what can, especially those highest at risk, what can they do to try to hedge against this?
Well, first of all, I'd say I'm not so sure that we can't change that. There's an enormous interest. If you were watching any of the food trends and trends for 2016, one of the biggest trends that was pointed out by virtually every survey was more people want Canadian food. More people want local food. They want sustainable food. They want to know where it's coming from. So I do think we are going to have to question our reliance on imports. Of course, Canada will always be a trading nation when it comes to food, and there's a good number of foods that we cannot grow here in Canada due to our climate. But there's a lot that we could do to source more local food, and that would make us less vulnerable to international currency fluctuations. People are really coming up with very innovative solutions right across the country, and they range from urban agriculture to collective kitchens to group buying things to community-supported agriculture. There's all kinds of ways in which people are trying to get accessible, healthy food into their diet. But there's one overwhelming factor that drives food insecurity, and that's poverty. It's the level of income that you have. 60% of the people who live in food insecurity are actually the working poor. Only less than 20% of those in food insecurity are on social assistance. But the vast majority of people on social assistance are living in food insecurity. So we know what these numbers are. What we need is some political will to address them.
Well, and that's just it. I mean, when you get into sort of the policy of this, the Liberals have promised some kind of a national food policy. What do you think it needs to look like to try to execute some change in this field?
I'm really excited that there is an announcement of both a national food policy and a national anti-poverty strategy. Those are two essential elements that we need to help fix this issue. I think the national food policy should fix a target of zero hunger in Canada. There's no reason in a country as wealthy as Canada why anyone is food insecure. We also need to have a good focus on more healthy food and more sustainably produced food. But these things work together. It's a system, and we need to address them in a systematic way. It's not something that the Minister of Agriculture can solve all by himself. We need all the different departments and all the different stakeholders, so industry and NGOs and people who are actually living in food insecurity need to be at the table where these decisions are going to be made. Well, so we're very hopeful that, with the Prime Minister's announcement, this is a new, collaborative, open, transparent era of governance, that we're actually going to make some progress and be able to bring some firsthand experience to that policy table and get some solutions that work.
All right. Diana Bronson, it may not be the first thing we think about when we see the falling dollar, but it certainly is a very important one. So I'm glad we had this conversation. Thanks so much.
Thank you.